Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the Life Divine with our beloved Ranga. We're continuing chapter 22, The Problem of Life, beginning with the paragraph, the first of these four positions, and you have to give the page number.
The page number is 224.
Good.
So in the previous para, he has spoken about the relation of consciousness and force in four different places. He starts with the Satchidananda, then he comes down to matter, then he comes to mind, and then finally ends with supermind. No?
Yes.
Satchidananda 1,
Matter.
matter 2, mental level 3, supermind 4. So these are the positions. He will now make a short comment on these. We start reading?
Yes.
The first of these four positions, the source of all this progressive relation between consciousness and force, is their poise in the being of Satchidananda, where they are one. For there, the force is consciousness of being, working itself out without ever ceasing to be consciousness, and the consciousness is similarly luminous force of being, eternally aware of itself and its own delight, and never ceasing to be this power of utter light and self-possession. The second relation is that of material nature. It is the poise of being in the material universe which is the great denial of Satchidananda by himself. For here there is the utter apparent separation of force from consciousness, the spacious miracle of the all-governing and infallible inconscient, which is only the mask, but which modern knowledge has mistaken for the real face of the cosmic deity. The third relation is the poise of being in mind and in life, which we are emerging out of this denial, bewildered by it, struggling without any possibility of cessation by submission, but also without any clear knowledge or instinct of a victorious solution against the 1,001 problems involved in this perplexing apparition of man, the half-potent conscient being out of the omnipotent inconscience of the material universe. The fourth relation is the poise of being in supermind. It is the fulfilled existence which will eventually solve all this complex problem created by the partial affirmation emerging out of the total denial. And it must needs solve it in the only possible way, by the complete affirmation, fulfilling all that was secretly there, contained in potentiality and intended in fact of evolution behind the mask of the great denial. That is the real life of the real man, towards which this partial life and partial unfulfilled manhood is striving forward, with a perfect knowledge and guidance in the so-called inconscient within us, but in our conscient parts with only a dim and struggling prevision, with fragments of realization, with glimpses of the ideal, with flashes of revelation and inspiration in the poet and the prophet, the seer and the transcendentalist, the mystic and the thinker, the great intellects and the great souls of humanity.
Oh, so beautiful.
So he has summarized whatever he has said earlier, but beautifully and so short and compact, concise. There are a few things which we need to see because of the description that he is giving. So, the first of these four positions, the source of all this progressive relation between consciousness and force. So, that's the starting point. Satchidananda is the creator of the universe, but not by itself, but through supermind. And it uses its power of Maya, the power to make forms, it uses through supermind and manifests itself in the physical world. So that's the source. Satchidananda is the poise in the being of Satchidananda where they are one. So consciousness and force become one at that level. And for there the force is consciousness of being, working itself out without ever ceasing to be consciousness. He is adding also being, so you must note that. So he is saying, in the being of such, where they are one, for there the force is consciousness of being. So he very often uses the word being. You must know that he's talking of the existence. And existence, you can think of it as substance. So there is a substance at the highest level, which is very, 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 very subtle. You can almost say there is nothing, that fully conscious of itself and also force. It is conscious and force. Okay, so of being, working itself out without ever ceasing to be consciousness, and the consciousness is similarly luminous force. Now he is adding the word luminous to force because it is same as consciousness, therefore it is knowledge and it is luminous.
And he has an all cap on the C this time.
Yeah, okay.
Not on the first one, but on the second one.
Yeah, so that's what they have seen, that he is a little inconsistent with capitalization. That's what the archive thinks. And they may be right. He is not so particular about capitalization. That's right. Ceasing to be consciousness, and the consciousness similarly luminous force of being. It's also possible, after all, the lowercase and the capital, not much difference, only in size. Take for instance the letter S. Okay, you write lowercase like this, but the capital you write totally different letter. But in C it's not like that. So it could be either a misreading, or it could also be that he has not paid enough attention to it.
No, but I feel that the small C is making sense here because
I
the first
agree.
C
I also was thinking of
used
that.
as a common noun.
Yes.
The second C is actually like a one of the three of Satchidananda,
Yes.
So there is a reason why.
That I also thought that.
Yeah.
But there are other places where they feel that there is no reason. But here it does seem to make sense. I agree. Correct. So, in Satchidananda, consciousness and force are one, without ceasing to be each other. It's almost impossible for the mind to understand this. Consciousness remains consciousness, force remains force, and yet they are one. Very difficult for the mind to conceive of it. Anyway, then they come to the next one. For there, ceasing to be consciousness is force. Eternally aware of itself, luminous force of being. Again, he is using luminous force of being. Okay, and eternally aware of itself and of its delight, and never ceasing to be this power of utter light and self-possession. Interesting, he is talking of self-possession. He is very, very fond of the word possession. So, when you are in possession of something, you are totally master. You can do what you want with it. So that's it is totally, self-possession is completely master of itself. So, never ceasing to be this power of utter light and self-possession. And now he has introduced delight also into it. He is talking only of consciousness and force, but delight also is always there. Okay. The second relation is that of material nature. It is the poise of being in the material universe, which is a great denial of Satchidananda by himself. In every way you can see that what Satchidananda is, matter seems to be the opposite. Satchidananda is infinite, matter is finite. Satchidananda is formless, this is form. That is out of time and space, matter is in time and space. Everywhere it seems to be the opposite. That's why the denial is the opposite of this. The great denial.
Could you clarify something for us?
Yeah.
When he capitalizes nature, we hear in all of his works that nature is doing this.
Yeah.
Nature is pushing the evolution forward.
What I understand by nature cap is universal nature.
Ah,
And when he is talking of a lowercase nature, it is the individual nature in you, which is body, mind, life.
Okay.
His nature is very generous. When you say,
Again, it's used as a common noun.
yeah,
But
it's
when
a
you're
common.
talking of particular like high
He has a
nature,
good nature. He has a
Mm-hmm.
wide nature, whatever. That is lowercase. But when he is speaking of nature, he is talking of Prakriti, the principle of action and
And this is
manifestation.
what's not clear to me. The second relation is that of material nature.
Yes,
Then he says it is the poise of being in the material universe which is the great denial
yes,
of Satchidananda by
yes,
himself.
yes. That's right. Because Satchidananda, when it comes down, we have discussed it many times,
Yes.
it limits itself and becomes the opposite of itself. This idea of limiting itself, we have discussed once again.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. So
Clear.
it
But
limits itself fully. So
he capitalizes himself also.
yes, and it's a game. Now we can see this business of manifestation. We can think in many ways. One is he's playing a game with himself. He hides himself in the opposite of himself, and he is coming out of it. He's enjoying the challenge. This is one way of seeing it.
And then there's the child playing in the eternal garden.
Yes, that's another way of looking at it. And the other way is the greater the challenge. Srila has discussed this, but he has given very short examples. He says that you can see that in human nature also, wherever there is an obstacle and you conquer it, then you get pleasure out of it. And more the difficulty, the more the enjoyment. So maximum difficulty you create and escape from it. And he is not satisfied only in one. He is doing that through you, through me, through... He wants to enjoy it in 100,000 million, 7.5 billion now. This is what he's doing. I usually point out about the magician Houdini. Houdini is the magician who blindfolds himself, handcuffs himself, puts himself into a trunk. The trunk is locked and the key thrown away, and the whole trunk is thrown into the sea, the metal case. And he escapes from there. This is what the divine is doing and enjoying himself. Leela is a play of the divine. But the other, and this play is not a pretension. This is what Sri Aurobindo says very often. Niruddha is complaining to him and saying, you are divine, it's very easy for you, you are going on talking. Sri Aurobindo says, don't talk rubbish. Then the divine is doing this, it's not a pretense. It is, otherwise what is the meaning of an avatar who shows you the way, that these are the difficulties and we have to really struggle to get rid of these things. So it's not that it's easier for the divine to do that. They have to show the way. So this is what he says. So it's not a pretense. In another sense, it's a pretense because who are you? You are the divine, and you are playing a game on the stage of life. It's also in Vedanta we compare this to an actor. Okay, let's say Narad. Okay, he's on the stage and he's going to play, let's say, a character called, let's say, Alexander. You identify yourself fully with Alexander on the stage. The moment the play is over, you are back to Narad. So that's what the human soul is doing. When it is playing on the stage of life, it identifies itself with body, mind, life.
Yes.
The moment the play is over, you know that you are not Alexander, but you are Narad. This is the other way of also saying. This is the Vedantic example. So that is liberation.
The thing is that before the play is over, if you come to know your real self, then you can play this game more perfectly.
Yes, that's right. So this is... So actually they say that there is no real imprisonment. It's a play that you are playing with yourself. You completely identify yourself with the character. We are identifying ourselves with the body, mind, life. This is the character we are playing on the stage.
It is the divine in veiling.
Yeah.
We are divine in veiling.
Yeah, that's right.
And put by nature herself.
That's right.
Maya.
So Narad, you had a problem with that? Self-denial?
No.
It's okay?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's the opposite. The seeming opposite again. That also we must say.
Seeming,
It's a
yes,
seeming opposite.
seeming.
Because even in the physical world, with a divine consciousness, you will not be deceived. You will not be subject to the modes of nature. You will have for instance, Sri Aurobindo is a human being to begin with, but he is in the physical world, but he is not deceived like we are. So it's possible to be in the physical world with a divine consciousness. That's why it is seeming. It's possible to eliminate the seeming. So that's the second relation is that of material nature. It is the poise of being in the material universe, which is a great denial of Satchidananda by himself. For here, there is the utter apparent separation of force from consciousness, the specious miracle of the all-governing and infallible inconscient, which is only the mask, but which modern knowledge has mistaken for the real face of the cosmic deity. Is this clear? First of all, the word specious, that which seems to be very convincing, but actually untrue.
Yes.
That's a word, that's what it means. It's a miracle. And the all-governing and infallible inconscient. The inconscient matter is producing all these things, and which is only a mask. The ignorance is a mask. Behind that mask, the divine presence is there even in matter. So if you are at a high level of consciousness, even in material things, you will see the divine presence. So it's a mask. At the human level, the body-mind life is a mask. And you remove the mask, you see the soul.
But he says, but which modern knowledge is mistaken for the...
That is science.
Science.
Science is saying, what his meaning is, science is saying matter is the only reality. So that he is using a very poetic word, he is using the word deity, cosmic deity. What he means is, science is saying that matter is the only reality. It is mistakenly thinking that. Okay? So, why only science? Even the materialist, he may not be a scientist. Then, even in India we have materialists, and they are called the Charvakas.
But here he is saying that the modern knowledge considers the infallible inconscient to be the cosmic deity.
Yeah.
So inconscient is not material, right?
No, it is matter.
Okay.
It is matter. The inconscient is matter. Actually, very strictly speaking,
No.
inconscient is even below matter.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because
That is true. But if you, in a general way of speaking, you can identify matter with.
Because matter is the first thing that comes out of inconscient. That is, in the inconscient is exact.
Which is plunging. What you are saying is correct, because, but as is, we have to be a little flexibility we have to give. But inconscient is even below matter.
Yeah, exactly. So
But it contains the seeds of the new world.
Yes.
Mother
I
has
think here they mean
said
that modern science considers the inconscient to be the father of the of matter from which it has come. That's why it calls it the cosmic deity. Wrongly, that's what it said here, because they don't want to consider the superconscient as being the real. They don't consider involution as anything. The evolution, yes. So they think everything is coming out of the bottom inconscient, but they don't believe in the involutionary thing.
Saritaji, I don't think you are very right, because the scientist, the materialist, will not admit the inconscient. He will take matter as the ultimate reality.
Okay. So here when
The
we talk-
inconscient, only one who is a spiritual person or seeing the reality will think, yes, there is something even below matter. But the matter will be the ultimate reality for the scientist and the materialist.
So here when they talk of infallible inconscient, they're actually talking about matter.
Yes.
And for Freud, the subconscious was everything.
Yes.
Never mentioned the inconscious.
That's right. They don't know about the inconscient.
Right.
And subconscient is even slightly above the matter. Yeah. Now we come to the third one. The third relation is the poise of being in mind and in the life which we see emerging out of this denial, bewildered by it, struggling without any possibility of cessation by submission, but also without any clear knowledge or instinct of a victorious solution against the 1,001 problems involved in this perplexing apparition of man, the half-potent conscient being out of the omnipotent inconscience of the material universe. So the inconscience is omnipotent. It is producing everything in the evolution, the material universe. So let's look at the thing a little carefully. The third relation is the poise of being in mind and in the life. So our normal condition, which we see emerging out of this denial, bewildered by it. Life has, in fact, the chapter heading is problem of life. So there are plenty of problems. There is disharmony, there is so much of violence, all these things come out in life. So there's no apparent solution to it. We see emerging, bewildered by it, struggling. In fact, all of life is only struggle. Okay? Without any possibility of cessation, by submission. Now, what he means by submission, we have to look a little carefully.
Would it be surrender?
Huh?
Would it be surrender in yoga terms?
Yeah, that's right. Whereas in man, when he surrenders to the divine, he can find a solution. But in the life, even submission, you will not find it. And submission to whom?
Exactly. So when he talks about submission, which submission is he talking about?
That's exactly what I am. I am a little puzzled myself. So, probably.
It means submission to the lower forces.
Well, cessation, I think he's talking
Because in
about
life-
cessation, stopping it all by submitting to it. Just
Without
finishing
But
it
there is
all.
no cessation. Even if you submit to it, there is no cessation.
Yeah.
That's what
That's right. That's what he's saying.
Without any possibility of cessation by submission.
That's the thing. So even if you submit, they realize it doesn't cease. It doesn't stop.
Okay, I think I've understood. He's talking even of mind. But when you submit, you have to go above the mind to get a solution. So that's what he's saying, that even if you submit, even at the mental level, you won't find a solution. The solution will be above the mind and not in the mind.
That's it.
That's what it means. Yeah, now it's clear. Okay, but because it was life, I was getting a little confused. Yeah, now it's clear. So at our level, submission is one of the ways to go to the higher level. But by submission itself, you will not be able to solve the problem in mind. That's what it means. After all, he's talking of the region in mind.
Exactly.
So, but also without any clear knowledge or instinct of a victorious solution. No solution at the mental and vital level. You have to go beyond it. Against the 1,001 problems involved in this perplexing apparition of man, the half-potent conscient being, out of the omnipotent inconscience of the material universe. When man comes into the picture, it is even worse than at the animal level. Because there are so many possibilities. Half-potent conscient being out of the omnipotent inconscience. Omnipotent inconscience because the inconscience is producing everything. In evolution, everything is coming out of it. The fourth relation is the poise of being in supermind. It is the fulfilled existence. This is another favorite word of Sri Aurobindo. Fulfillment. Not a escape. Constantly he is talking of the ascetic is escaping the world and going away. Sri Aurobindo is saying God has created matter, life and mind. Fulfill them. Find the real reason why they are there and see that you remove all the extra fluff, if you want, and get to the what is the purpose of matter, what is the purpose of life, what is the purpose of mind. Fulfill them. Let them each have satisfaction. That's what he says. In fact, the purpose of the body, he says, it has the right to good health, absolute power, and longevity. This is the right of the body. So fulfill it. Then he says life is seeking for pleasure. In the wrong way. Fulfill it. It has the right to pleasure. Not pleasure, but I will say for ananda, for enjoyment. He uses the word enjoyment. So it has the right to enjoyment. So fulfill it. When we are trying to fulfill it, we are also getting pain. But fulfillment is enjoyment without pain. Yeah, when you go there, you can get that fulfillment. What about the mind? It has the right to knowledge. He says that in other places. It has the right to knowledge. Therefore, fulfill it. That's what he's saying. So, fulfilled existence, which will eventually solve all this complex problem created by the partial affirmation emerging out of the total denial. This affirmation is also another favorite word of his, negation and affirmation. Affirmation means always a positive thing. So, slowly it is going towards affirmation, but it's only half affirmation, partial affirmation. Emerging out of the total denial, and it must needs solve it in the only possible way by the complete affirmation, fulfilling all that was secretly there, contained in potentiality, and intended in fact of evolution behind the mask of the great denial. Intended in fact of evolution. The very fact that evolution is going from inconscious to consciousness, therefore he's saying there's an intention you can see, and the intention you have to fulfill it.
He uses this great denial twice now.
Yeah. In fact, many other places also. Even Mother has spoken. La grande négation, she has used the word. In her agenda, she has spoken. Matter is the great denial. And there are people in the ashram who represented the great denial also. Okay, so, but with possibilities, there are possibilities. So, clear, na? So, complete affirmation, fulfilling all that was secretly there, contained in potentiality, and intended in fact of evolution behind the mask of the great denial. This is very interesting. He is saying intention. How do you see the intention? Because of evolution. Evolution is pointing towards an intention. In fact, even many scientists don't think that there is a what is called teleology, that there is an aim in evolution. Some believe, some don't believe. They say just it's a random mutation of cells without any aim. But others point out, no, there is very clearly an aim. The biological organisms are becoming more and more complex and more capable. So there is an intention. In fact, this is also what Teilhard de Chardin, that French paleontologist, he also speaks about it. He says it's the omega point at which you are going. He uses the word omega point, same as using the word supermind.
They also use the word divine intelligence. They also use the word divine intelligence. When they talk about the evolution theory, Charles Darwin, of course, doesn't give it any spiritual thing in this, but he just tabulates what he's seen through his Galapagos experiments and all that. But his bottom line behind it is survival of the fittest and struggle for existence. Again, now people are saying that that is one way of looking at it, but actually it's not a survival as though they are fighting, because they have also seen the other side of it. Creatures are helping each other. Great cohabitation.
That's right.
Social contact between animals.
Teilhard also uses the term noosphere. The noosphere.
Yeah, that's right. So there is an
So he
intention.
had a glimpse of the supermind.
Even if they have not seen the supermind, they can clearly see that there is an intention and is going towards that.
So when we talk of the great denial, is it because of the fact that has been an evolution, or there is something that doesn't want to go up? What is the great denial reflective of?
It's a little bit of both. It becomes the opposite, but now it is resisting change.
So
You must remember that there are two forces always, okay? And this is even science has seen. Equal and opposite. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So these are the dualities. In the physical world, dualities. So there is a element of progress wanting to go up, but there is also a suppression of it. Both the things are there. And that's a big problem. That's why there is a slow change. The law of stability is there, no change. And there is also a law of change, a slow change. So all these things are there. So great denial, yes, because the body is a big drag on the. In fact, when you come to matter, he will tell you what the problem of matter is. It's a total denial of the divine in every way. It is dark. It is not allowing you to go forward. There are even beings who constantly deceive you.
Yes.
All these things are there, yes.
And they push you down, and you're actually open to them. That's the Adhyatmic
Yes.
force. You think it's yourself, but actually it's from outside.
Yes. So
Right.
denial in that sense also, yes. And that's the reason why the ascetic doesn't want it. He escapes. And Sri Aurobindo says, if he wants to escape, fine, I have no problem with that. So,
But he says then only half God's work is done.
pardon?
In Savitri, he says then only half God's work is done.
Yes, that's right.
If you escape.
If you get stuck at the self, only half. If you escape and go only up to the self, it's only half.
It's the violent escape, and you can't handle the matter.
Yeah.
It says here also in Maya, the chapter on Maya, he speaks of the same thing.
He says in Life Divine, earlier chapters, if you remember, he says, what God has created and intended, what right do we have to deny it? God has created matter and life and mind. So there must be a purpose to it. Who are we to say no to it? Okay, so
But then you have the astonishing statement of Mother, the world is just as it should be.
yes. Intended, because it is intended.
Yes, yes.
Because it's a play, and he has made rules for the play.
Ah, yes.
And the rules are the maximum difficulty, and we'll get out of it. The rules have been made for the play. That is the real life of the real man, towards which this partial life and partial unfulfilled manhood is striving forward, with a perfect knowledge and guidance in the so-called inconscient within us, but in our conscient parts with only a dim and struggling prevision, with fragments of realization, with glimpses of the ideal, with flashes of revelation and inspiration in the poet, the prophet, the seer and the transcendentalist, the mystic and the thinker, the great intellects and the great souls of humanity. All these people have got glimpses of the ideal and flash fragments of realization, small partial experiences. Many people have had these experiences, and they are only pointing the way to that. That is the real life of the real man. Unfulfilled manhood is striving forward with a perfect knowledge and guidance in the so-called inconscient within us, but in our conscient parts with only a dim and struggling prevision, with fragments of realization, with glimpses of the ideal, with flashes of revelation and inspiration. The poet, he is including the poet also, isn't it? Yeah. And the prophet, the seer and the transcendentalist, the mystic and the thinker, and the great intellects and the great souls of. It's true. If you read, at least I know English poetry, we have read quite a bit, but always there are hints of spiritual elements in them.
Oh, yes.
Almost all. Even Shakespeare has touches of that. Now, from the data we have now before us, we can see that the difficulties which arise from the imperfect poise of consciousness and force in man, in his present status of mind and life, are principally three. First, he is aware only of a small part of his own being, his surface mentality, his surface life, his surface physical being is all that he knows, and he does not know even all of that. Below is the occult surge of the subconscious and his subliminal mind. His subconscious and his subliminal mind, below is the occult surge of the subconscious and the subliminal mind. his subconscious and his subliminal life impulses, his subconscious corporeality, and all that large part of himself which he does not know and cannot govern, but which rather knows and governs him. For existence and consciousness and force being one, we can only have some real power over so much of our existence as we are identified with by self-awareness. The rest must be governed by his own consciousness, which is subliminal to our surface, mind and life and body. And yet, the two being one movement and not two separate movements, the larger and more potent part of ourselves must govern and determine in the mass the smaller and less powerful. Therefore, we are governed by the subconscious and the subliminal, even in our conscious existence and in our very self-mastery and self-direction. We are only instruments of what seems to us the inconscient within us. He has started telling you, he is talking only of the subconscious and the subliminal, but this is again and again we are the cosmos in a compressed manner. So we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. That's why we can become cosmic. And what is it? What are we then? What is the cosmos? There is something below you, that's a subconscious. There is something even below that, inconscient. Then there is the intraconscient. You have to go horizontally deep within into yourself. Then there is the superconscient. He even speaks of a circumconscient. The aura around you is a circumconscient. This is what you are. But you think that you are only surface, body, mind, life. So,
and that also you don't know very well.
Yeah, even that we don't know very well, exactly. Science is struggling to make even the mystery of the body, how it works, is trying to find out. Let alone life and mind. That is still far away. So this is what he's saying. But then he will go on to, he will tell you in the next two paras, first, I don't know myself. Second, I don't know the universe. And then he will discuss what the problems are when you don't know yourself and you don't know the universe. You don't know yourself within yourself, you don't know what is outside yourself.
Namaste.